So in this video, we will be reviewing how to multiply radicals or multiply square roots. So multiplying square roots together is a pretty simple process that follows what most students would think they would need to do by their gut instincts. So the first step when you multiply square roots is you're going to multiply those coefficients together. So here I can see coefficients of 2 and 3, and because I see multiplication in here, I take 2 times 3, and that gives me 6. Then we multiply the numbers underneath the square root together, which are called the radicands. So I have 5 and 20. Well, 5 times 20 is 100. So this would become the square root of 100. And then we simplify the square root. Well, here I notice that 100 is in fact a perfect square. So the square root of 100 is 10. So I rewrite that as 6 times the square root of 100, which is 10. And that becomes 60. So let's try this out with 2 more examples. So again, remember our first step is to multiply the coefficients. So I have 5 times negative 4, which is negative 20. I then multiply the 2 values underneath the radical, which is 8 times 6, which is 48. And then from here, I simplify my square root. Now I notice that 48 is not a perfect square this time around, but if I look at some of the perfect squares that are less than 48, so if I think about a couple of them, I can see, well, everything's divisible by 1, so I don't count that one, but I can see that 48 is divisible by both 4 and 16. So I'm going to pick 16 because it's a bigger number, a bigger factor. And I'm going to rewrite the square root of 48 as 16 times 3. And then from here, that becomes the square root of 16 times the square root of 3. So that becomes negative 20 times the square root of 16 is 4, times then the square root of 3. So this becomes negative 20 times 4 is negative 80, times the square root of 3. So again, we multiplied the 2 coefficients, multiplied what's under the radical, and then simplified that radical. So now let's start with example 2. So here I multiply the coefficients, which is 8 times 2, so that's 16. I then multiply what's under the radical, so 27 times 3 gives me 81. I then notice that I need to simplify my radical. So here, the square root of 81 is 9. That is a perfect square. So I'm going to rewrite that as 9. And then notice here that our 16 does not contain a radical around it. So while it's tempting to rewrite that as 4, note that without the radical, that is just plain old 16. So notice carefully there that we did not rewrite that 16 as 4. There's no radical around it. But because the 81 was a perfect square, we did rewrite the square root of 81 as 9. Then to end, we multiply the 16 times 9, and we find an answer of 144. So notice here that some of our simplifying of square roots are going to result in nice just integer numbers, while other ones are going to result as a simplified square root that still contains a root in the problem. Regardless, your answer needs to be in this exact form where we simplify square roots. No rounded decimal answers will be allowed.